The funeral flowers were still fresh when my brother Derek pointed at the door. My sister Nicole stood beside him with her arms crossed, nodding in agreement. Their faces showed no mercy, only cold determination. I was still wearing my black funeral dress, the one I'd wore to say goodbye to Dad. The fabric felt heavy against my skin as I stood there, trying to understand what was happening. My suitcase sat by my feet, already packed by Derek while I was in the bathroom. They'd gone through my room and thrown everything into that worn gray bag without care. I could see my favorite sweater hanging out of the zipper, wrinkled and mistreated. Dad's cologne still lingered in the hallway, that familiar scent of cedar and vanilla that made my chest ache. How could they do this so soon after we buried him? Derek's finger remained pointed at the door like a weapon. Words died in my throat. I grabbed my suitcase handle, my fingers trembling. As I stepped through the doorway into the cool evening air, I heard the lock click behind me. My tiny studio apartment felt suffocating that night. The walls were thin, and I could hear my neighbor's television through the plaster. I sat on my second-hand couch, still in that funeral dress, unable to move. That's when I remembered the envelope. 3 weeks before Dad died, he'd called me to the hospital. His hands were shaking as he pressed the thick manila envelope into my palm. His voice was weak but urgent. "Paige, listen carefully. Only open this if they turn against you. Not before." I tucked it away in my nightstand drawer, confused but obedient. Now I pulled it out with trembling fingers. The envelope was sealed with red wax, old-fashioned and deliberate. Dad's handwriting on the front read, "For Paige Marie Thompson. Private." I set it on my coffee table and stared at it for hours. The clock ticked past midnight. What could be inside that was so important, so secret, that Dad had hidden it even from me? Part of me was terrified to open it. What if it changed everything? What if it made things worse? But another part of me, the part that had just been thrown out of my childhood home by my own siblings, needed answers. I needed to understand why Dad had given me this warning, this preparation for betrayal. My fingers finally reached for the envelope at 3 in the morning. The funeral reception had been torture. Derek and Nicole worked the room like politicians, shaking hands and accepting sympathy with practiced grace. They wore their grief like expensive jewelry, something to show off and admire. I'd stood in the corner by the dessert table, watching them perform. Not a single person approached me. It was as if I'd become invisible the moment Dad's casket was lowered into the ground. Mrs. Patterson from next door had been the only one who acknowledged my existence. She'd leaned close, her perfume overwhelming, studied my face with sharp eyes. "You look exactly like your father when he was planning something," she'd whispered. The comment had frozen me in place. Planning something. I wasn't planning anything. I was grieving. But Mrs. Patterson had already moved away, leaving me with that strange observation. Now, sitting in my apartment with the unopened envelope, her words came back to me. Had Dad been planning something? Had he known what Derek and Nicole would do? I thought about the last few months of his life. How he'd asked me to visit him alone several times. How he'd asked specific questions about my siblings, about their spending habits, about their attitudes toward his business. At the time, I'd thought he was just making conversation, filling the heavy silence of his hospital room. But now I wondered if he'd been gathering information, making decisions, protecting something, or someone. My hands shook as I broke the wax seal. The envelope tore open with a sound that seemed too loud in my silent apartment. Inside were thick legal documents, the kind with blue backing and official stamps. I pulled them out carefully, my heart hammering against my ribs. The first page made my vision blur. Last Will and Testament of Theodore James Thompson. I read the words slowly, then again, then a third time. Every property Dad owned was listed in careful legal language. The family house on Maple Street, the vacation cabin in the mountains, the downtown office building where his company operated, the 2 rental properties on the east side, his savings accounts. investment portfolios, and the business itself. Next to each item in bold black text was my name. Paige Marie Thompson. Not Derek. Not Nicole. Me. I flipped through page after page, each one confirming what I couldn't believe. Everything Dad had built over 40 years was now mine. The documents were dated 6 months before his death, notarized and witnessed by people I didn't recognize. The final page contained a handwritten note in Dad's shaky script. Paige, I trust you to protect what I built. They only want to spend it. You understand the value of hard work. Use this wisely. Make me proud. Love always, Dad. Tears blurred the words as I read them over and over. Dad had known. He'd known what they would do, and he'd protected me anyway. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was the heir to everything, and my siblings had no idea. For 3 days, I didn't leave my apartment. I called in sick to work and sat with those documents spread across my coffee table like a puzzle I couldn't solve. The anger came in waves. How dare they throw me out? How dare they treat me like garbage after everything I'd done for Dad? I'd been the one visiting him 3 times a week when he got sick. I'd been the one reading to him, bringing him home-cooked meals, sitting through his doctor's appointments. Derek had visited twice in 6 months. Nicole had shown up only when she needed money. The temptation to march back to that house and throw the will in their faces was overwhelming. I could picture their expressions, the shock and horror as they realized what they'd lost. But then I'd remember Dad's words. Only open this if they turn against you. He'd known I'd want revenge. He'd known I'd be hurt and angry. But something in his tone that day in the hospital suggested patience. They hadn't. But that didn't mean I had to become like them. I decided to wait. I would let them fall on their own, making the mistakes Dad had probably predicted they'd make. And when they finally hit bottom, when they realized how far they'd fallen, I would be there. Not to gloat, but to show them exactly what they'd thrown away when they threw me out. 2 weeks after the funeral, I returned to the house. I'd texted Nicole that I wanted to collect some personal items Dad had kept in the attic. She'd responded with a cold "fine" and nothing else. When I arrived, the house already looked different. New furniture in the living room, expensive and modern. A huge television mounted on the wall where Dad's old bookshelf used to be. Nicole sat on the new leather couch, scrolling through her phone and barely acknowledging my presence. I climbed to the attic, but I didn't go there for old belongings. I went there to observe. On my way to the kitchen for water, I noticed the mail stacked carelessly on the counter. Bills, lots of them. Red stamps that said overdue and final notice glared from white envelopes. I glanced at Nicole, still absorbed in her phone, and quietly flipped through the pile. Mortgage payment missed. Property tax late. Electric company threatening disconnection. They were bleeding money, and based on the shopping bags piled by the door, they had no intention of stopping. In just 2 weeks, they'd started destroying everything Dad had built. The rental properties had management companies that sent monthly statements. I spotted one in the pile. 3 months behind on repairs. Tenants threatening to leave. They weren't just spending recklessly. They were neglecting the responsibilities that came with Dad's empire. I took a photo of the bills with my phone, careful not to make a sound. Then I climbed back down from the attic with an empty box, telling Nicole I couldn't find what I was looking for. She didn't even look up. Mr. Feldman's office smelled like old books and leather. He was Dad's lawyer for 20 years, a silver-haired man with kind eyes and a firm handshake. When I showed him the will, he smiled sadly and nodded. Your father moved all the titles into your name 6 months ago. Everything is legal, properly documented, and completely uncontestable. He spread the property deeds across his massive oak desk. Each one showed my name as the owner, dated and filed with the county. Everything. They don't know, he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. I shook my head. Mr. Feldman leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. Your father was a smart man. He saw what was coming. He paused, studying me carefully. You don't need to rush this, Paige. Let them make their mistakes. Let them show their true colors completely. When they've dug themselves deep enough, then you step in. His words echoed my own thoughts. What if they destroy everything before then? Asked, my voice small. They can't destroy what they don't legally own. Any loans they take out, any mortgages they try to secure. They'll need your signature. When the banks verify ownership, everything will come to light. He smiled grimly. They're building their own trap, and they don't even know it. I left his office feeling lighter. I wasn't alone in this. Dad had made sure I had support, legal protection, and time. Time to let Derek and Nicole reveal exactly who they really were. I ran into Nicole at the coffee shop near campus 3 weeks later. I was in line, ordering my usual black coffee. Then I heard her laugh. I turned to see her with 2 friends I didn't recognize. All of them dressed in expensive clothes and carrying designer bags. When she spotted me, her laugh got louder and said, Paige, still living in that tiny apartment. She didn't bother to lower her voice. Her friends looked me over, taking in my discount store jeans and worn jacket. Dad would be so disappointed, Nicole continued, sipping her caramel latte with extra whip. He always wanted us to be successful. I smiled politely, my stomach churning. I'm doing fine. Fine is such a sad word, she said, then turned to her friends. My sister thinks being broke is fine. Isn't that adorable? I watched as she pulled out her credit card to pay for her friends' drinks, a grand gesture of generosity. The barista swiped it once. Declined. She swiped it again. Declined. Nicole's face turned red as she fumbled for another card. That one worked, but the damage was done. Her friends exchanged glances, and the smugness in the air deflated like a punctured balloon. I picked up my simple black coffee and walked past their table. See you around, Nicole. The look on her face, that mixture of embarrassment and fury, was worth more than any revenge I could have planned. They were already falling apart. Exactly as Mr. Feldman predicted. I just had to wait. Dad's company, Thompson Construction, occupied the ground floor of the downtown office building. I hadn't been there since he got sick. Too painful to visit the place where he'd spent 40 years building something from nothing. But now I needed to see it. To understand what I'd inherited beyond just property and money. The receptionist, Brenda, looked up when I walked in. Her face crumpled immediately. Paige, honey. I'm so sorry about your dad. I hugged her, feeling the genuine grief in her embrace. She'd worked for Dad since I was in elementary school. I spent the afternoon walking through the office, reintroducing myself to people who'd known me as a child. The senior project manager, Vincent, showed me the current contracts and timelines. Your dad built something solid here, he said, pride evident in his voice. We miss him every day. When I mentioned I was just visiting, not taking over, his face fell. That's a shame. You're the only one of Theodore's kids who ever actually worked here. You understand what this place means. I'd spent summers during college answering phones, filing documents, even learning basic estimating. Derek and Nicole had both refused Dad's offers to teach them the business. They'd wanted the money but none of the work. If you ever decide to come back, Vincent said quietly, we'd follow you. All of us. You're your father's daughter. The words planted themselves in my mind like seeds. Maybe there was more to protecting Dad's legacy than just holding on to property. Maybe there was a way to honor what he'd built. The phone call from the bank came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, shelving books at the public library where I'd worked part-time since college. The caller ID showed First National Bank. And my stomach immediately clenched. Is this Paige Thompson, owner of the property at 847 Maple Street? The woman's voice was professional but tense. Yes, I managed. We have a problem. Derek and Nicole Thompson recently applied for a home equity line of credit using that address. When we ran the title search, your name came up as the sole owner. They claimed to be co-owners. My hands started shaking. How much did they try to borrow? $300,000. The number hit me like a punch. 300,000. Against a house they didn't own. Using Dad's legacy as collateral for whatever spending spree they had planned. We've denied the application and flagged it for possible fraud. As the legal owner, we wanted to notify you immediately. We recommend speaking with an attorney. I thanked her and hung up. They tried to steal $300,000. Not borrow, steal, because they had no legal right to that property. They'd forged documents or lied to the bank, and now there would be consequences. I called Mr. Feldman immediately. He listened without interrupting, then said calmly, "The house of cards is falling, Paige. Faster than I expected. What happens now?" Now they get a letter from the bank explaining why they were denied. That letter will mention the real owner's name. They'll know everything by the end of the week. The phone calls started that Friday. 17 missed calls from Derek. 23 from Nicole. Texts flooded my phone, dozens of them, ranging from confused to angry to desperate. I ignored them all. On Saturday morning they showed up at my apartment. The banging on my door was so loud my neighbor poked his head out to check if I was okay. I opened the door to find Derek and Nicole standing there, both looking like they hadn't slept. "We need to talk," Derek said, pushing past me into my tiny living room. Nicole followed, her eyes scanning my cheap furniture with barely disguised contempt. "About the house," she added. I crossed my arms and waited. "There's been some kind of mistake," Derek started. "The bank says the house is in your name. Obviously that's wrong. Dad left everything to all of us." "Did he?" I asked calmly. Nicole's face flushed. "You did something. You tricked him while he was sick. You manipulated an old man." The accusation stung, but I kept my voice level. "I did nothing. Dad made his own choices." "Then fix it," Derek demanded. "Sign the house over to all of us the way it should be. We'll pretend this mistake never happened." I smiled, and something in that smile made them both step back. "I have a better idea. My lawyer has some documents that need signing. Simple paperwork to clarify the ownership situation. If you both sign them, we can resolve this quickly." They exchanged glances. I could see the calculation in their eyes. The assumption that I was too naive, too soft to actually stand up to them. "Fine," Nicole said. "Where do we sign?" I handed them Mr. Feldman's business card. "He'll have everything ready Monday morning." Mr. Feldman worked over the weekend preparing the documents. Derek and Nicole arrived at his office Monday morning. They were confident, almost smug. They thought they were about to regain control of everything Dad had left behind. I watched from the reception area as Mr. Feldman spread the papers across his conference table. He explained each document in his patient lawyer voice. Property deeds confirming my ownership. Bank statements showing all accounts in my name. The original will, notarized and dated 6 months before Dad's death. "These documents," Mr. Feldman said, "confirm that Paige Marie Thompson is the sole owner of all properties and assets. By signing here, you acknowledge this fact and agree not to contest it." Derek's face went pale. "Wait, what? You're signing away any claim to Dad's estate," I said from the doorway. They both spun around. Nicole's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "You said this was paperwork to clarify ownership," Derek stammered. "It is. It clarifies that I own everything, and you own nothing." I watched the realization dawn on their faces. Within 48 hours of signing, they received official notice that they were unauthorized occupants of 847 Maple Street. They had 30 days to vacate. Derek showed up at my apartment that night, his face red with rage. He shouted in the hallway about how I'd ruined their lives, destroyed the family, betrayed everything Dad stood for. My neighbor called the building manager, and Derek was escorted out. But before he left, I said quietly, "You ruined my life first. You threw me out with Dad's cologne still in the air. Remember?" Thompson Construction had a monthly staff meeting, A tradition Dad started years ago. I decided it was time to attend. When I walked into the conference room, conversations stopped. Everyone stared. Vincent stood up, surprise and hope warring on his face. "Paige, what are you doing here?" I took the seat at the head of the table, the one that used to be Dad's. My hands were trembling, but I kept my voice steady. "I'm Theodore Thompson's daughter. And as of 3 months ago, I'm the owner of this company." Shocked silence. Then Brenda started clapping. Slowly, others joined in until the whole room was applauding. I explained the situation as professionally as I could. Dad had left everything to me. I'd been learning the business, studying the contracts, understanding the company's position. I was ready to take over. Vincent grinned. "We've been waiting for you." The door burst open. Derek and Nicole stood there, Nicole clutching her designer bag like a weapon. "You can't do this," Derek said. I slid copies of the will across the table. Legal documents, property deeds, business registration showing my name. Dad trusted me with this company because he knew what you do. He watched you for years, spending his money, refusing to work, demanding more. He chose me because he knew I'd protect what he built. Nicole's face crumpled. "This isn't fair." "You're right," I said. "It's not fair. But it's legal, it's final, and it's what Dad wanted." They hired a lawyer, of course. A young man in an expensive suit who promised them he could overturn Dad's will, or of mental incompetence, reveal some hidden clause that would restore their inheritance. The first hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. I spent those weeks working at Thompson Construction during the day and studying legal documents at night. Mr. Feldman assured me we had an airtight case. But anxiety still kept me awake. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Derek and Nicole sat on one side with their lawyer, who looked increasingly uncomfortable as Mr. Feldman presented our evidence. Dad's medical records showing full mental capacity until his death. Testimony from his doctors. The original will, signed 6 months before he got sick, when his mind was sharp. Video testimony from the notary who'd witnessed the signing, describing Dad's clear intentions and sound reasoning. Their lawyer argued emotional manipulation, undue influence, fraud. But he had no evidence, only accusations and assumptions. Mr. Feldman brought out Dad's journals, entries written over 2 years. Pages where Dad documented Derek's gambling debts, Nicole's shopping addiction, their constant demands for money. Pages where he wrote about me, about my work ethic, my visits, my genuine care for him beyond his wallet. The judge read several entries aloud. Derek and Nicole sank lower in their seats with each word. Based on the evidence presented, the judge finally said, "Theodore Thompson's will is valid, legally binding, and reflects his clear intentions. This case is dismissed." Their lawyer quietly packed his briefcase. It was over. The courtroom had cleared, but I sat there for a long time. Derek and Nicole had left without a word, their faces blank with shock. Mr. Feldman touched my shoulder. "You did good, Paige. Your father would be proud." But I didn't feel victorious. Felt hollow. They were still my siblings. We'd shared a childhood, played in the same backyard, learned to ride bikes on the same street. Somewhere along the way, something had broken. Or maybe it had always been broken. And Dad's money just made the cracks visible. That night I drove to the house on Maple Street. My house legally and officially. The windows were dark. I sat in my car, staring at the front door, remembering 1,000 moments. Dad teaching me to change a tire in the driveway. Mom planting roses in the front garden before she died. Christmas mornings, birthday parties, normal family things that seemed like ancient history now. I unlocked the door with the key Mr. Feldman had given me. The house smelled stale, unlived in. Derek and Nicole had clearly moved out their new furniture, leaving only Dad's old pieces behind. I walked through rooms that felt both familiar and foreign. In the living room I found boxes stacked against the wall. Their belongings packed but not yet removed. I had told them they had 1 week. That week was almost up. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction. They'd thrown me out in my funeral dress. Now they were being forced out with boxes and deadlines. But mostly I just felt tired. Moving day arrived on a Saturday. I got there early before the sun was fully up. I wanted to be there when they came to say whatever needed to be said. Derek's truck pulled up at 8, followed by Nicole's sedan. They didn't look at me as they started loading boxes. No one spoke. The silence was heavy, awkward. I watched them carry furniture to the truck, their movements mechanical. After an hour I couldn't stand it anymore. "Do you need help?" Derek froze, a lamp in his hands. Nicole turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "Why would you help us?" she asked. "Because despite everything, you're still my family." Something shifted in Nicole's face. Not quite forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Derek set down the lamp. "Paige, His voice broke. "Sorry. For all of it. For the funeral, for throwing you out, for everything." Nicole wiped her eyes. "We were horrible to you. Dad saw it and we didn't. We thought we were entitled to his money just for being his kids. But you earned it. You were there." I sat on the porch steps. They joined me, one on each side. "Dad didn't leave you guys out to punish you," I said quietly. "He did it to teach you. He hoped you'd learn something." "We have," Derek said. "Too late, but we have." We sat there as the sun climbed higher. 3 siblings who'd forgotten how to be a family, trying to figure out if there was any path forward. The phone calls came daily after that. Derek apologizing again. Nicole asking how I was doing. First I was suspicious. Were they playing a new game, trying a different angle to get what they wanted? But as days turned into weeks, the calls continued. They weren't asking for money or property. They just wanted to talk. Nicole told me about her debt. How she'd been living beyond her means for years. Using credit cards to maintain an image that was completely fake. Derek admitted his gambling problem. How he'd lost thousands at casinos. Always believing the next bet would fix everything. They were broke, both of them. The fancy furniture had been repossessed. Nicole's car was on the edge of being taken back. Derek was living in a friend's basement. I listened to their confessions with mixed feelings. Part of me thought, this is what you deserve. But another part, the part that remembered being kids together, felt sympathy. One night, Nicole called crying. "I don't know what to do, Paige. I've made such a mess of everything." I thought about Dad's letter, his handwritten words. "I trust you to protect what I built." Protecting it didn't just mean holding on to property. It meant preserving the values he tried to teach all of us. Hard work, responsibility, family. "Nicole," I said carefully, "what if I could help you? Not by giving you money, but by giving you a chance to earn it." She sniffled. "What do you mean?" "Come work for me. Both of you. Real work at Thompson Construction. Starting at the bottom, learning the business the way Dad wanted you to learn it years ago." They accepted, though I could hear the shame in their voices. Derek started the following Monday as a general laborer on one of our construction sites. Nicole took a receptionist position, answering phones and filing documents. The same job I'd had during my college summers. I watched them carefully those first few weeks. Were they genuine, or was this another manipulation? But slowly I started to see changes. Derek showed up early, stayed late, and worked harder than I'd ever seen him work at anything. Nicole organized the filing system, updated client contacts, and never complained about the boring tasks. Vincent pulled me aside after the first month. "Your brother's a good worker." Surprised me. Brenda said similar things about Nicole. "She's learning fast. Actually asks good questions." I visited Dad's grave on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The headstone was simple, just his name and dates. I knelt in the grass and told him about Derek and Nicole working at the company, about their slow transformation. "I think you'd be proud," I whispered. "They're finally learning what you tried to teach them." The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, and for a moment I could almost feel Dad there, approving. That night I discovered something disturbing. While sorting through boxes from the house, I found Dad's gold watch hidden in Nicole's belongings. The one he'd given me at my college graduation. The one with an inscription on the back. To Paige, who always works hard. Love, Dad. They tried to sell it online. I found the listing complete with photos and a price tag. My hand trembled as I held the watch. I called an emergency family dinner. Derek and Nicole arrived at the house. Their house once, my house now, looking nervous. They knew something was up. I'd set the dining table the way Dad used to for Sunday dinners. 3 places. Simple plates. No ceremony. We ate in silence for a while, passing dishes without making eye contact. Finally I set down my fork. I found the watch. Nicole's face went white. Derek closed his eyes. The one Dad gave me at graduation. The one you tried to sell online. Paige, I can explain, Nicole started. Don't. I held up my hand. I almost stopped everything today. Almost kicked you both out of the company, ended this whole experiment. Because that watch meant more to me than the houses or the money. It was personal. They sat frozen, waiting for judgment. I pulled the watch from my pocket and set it on the table. But then I remembered something Dad told me when he gave it to me. He said, "Everyone makes mistakes, Paige. What matters is whether they learn from them." Derek looked up. "I'm so sorry," Nicole whispered. "I was desperate and I thought." "I know what you thought. That you were entitled to anything connected to Dad because you're his kids. But that's not how it works. You have to earn respect, earn trust, earn family." I stood up, the watch still on the table. "You have 3 days to decide. Either you're serious about changing, about earning your place in this family and this company, or you're not. If you're not, that's fine. Leave. But if you stay, this is the last betrayal I'll tolerate." The moving trucks showed up the next morning, but this time I'd called them. Derek and Nicole's belongings. Everything they'd stored in my garage was being moved to the 2 apartments I'd arranged for them. Not fancy places, but clean, affordable theirs. They arrived as the movers were loading the last boxes. "What's happening?" Derek asked. I handed them each a set of keys. "You're not living in a friend's basement or couch surfing anymore. These apartments are yours. Rent-free for 6 months. After that, you pay what you can afford based on your salaries." Nicole stared at the keys. "Why?" "Because Dad left me everything. So I could take care of the family, not destroy it. But there are conditions." I prepared a document simple and clear. They would continue working at Thompson Construction. They would attend financial counseling twice a month. They would be honest, show up on time, and prove they'd learned from their mistakes. Any violation, any hint of the old behavior, and they were done. They both signed without hesitation. Watching them drive away to their new apartments, I felt something loosen in my chest. This was what Dad had wanted. Not revenge, not punishment, but accountability. A chance for them to become the people they should have been all along. That evening I walked through the house on Maple Street one more time. The empty rooms echoed with memories. Tomorrow I'd start the renovations Dad had always planned but never got around to. Fresh paint, new flooring, making the house feel alive again. But tonight I just wandered, saying goodbye to old hurts. The silence in the house felt different now, peaceful rather than lonely. I found myself in Dad's study, the room where he used to handle business from home. His desk was exactly as he'd left it, papers still scattered. His reading glasses folded on top of a ledger. I'd avoided this room since taking ownership, unable to face the most personal space in the house. But tonight I felt ready. I sat in his worn leather chair, the springs creaking under my weight. The desk drawers held the usual things: pens, paper clips, old receipts. But the bottom drawer stuck when I tried to open it. I tugged harder and it finally gave way. Inside was a wooden box I'd never seen before. It was carved with Dad's initials, TJT, and a small brass lock kept it shut. I searched the desktop for a key and found one taped under the pencil holder. My hands shook as I unlocked the box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me in Dad's handwriting. Each envelope was dated, starting from 5 years ago and ending just days before he died. I pulled out the most recent one, dated 2 weeks before his death. The paper was thin, covered in his shaky script. Dear Paige, if you're reading this, then they turned against you, just as I feared they would. I'm sorry you had to experience that pain. But I want you to understand why I made the choices I made. The letter went on for pages. Dad explained how he'd watched Derek and Nicole spiral for years. I stayed up all night reading Dad's letters. Each one revealed more of his thinking. His pain at watching his children drift away from the values he'd tried to instill. One letter from 3 years ago stood out. Derek asked me for $50,000 today. When I asked what it was for, he said it was none of my business. That's when I knew I couldn't leave him money. He sees it as entitlement, not responsibility. Nicole is the same. They think my success just happened like luck or magic. They don't see the 70-hour weeks, the risks I took, the times I went without so the business could survive. Paige is different. She works 3 jobs and still finds time to visit me. She asks about the business because she cares, not because she wants something. If I leave everything to all 3 of them equally, Derek and Nicole will squander it in months. But if I leave it all to Paige, maybe, just maybe, she can save them from themselves. Another letter, dated 1 year ago. I'm not punishing Derek and Nicole. I'm protecting them. The worst thing I could do is give them money they haven't earned. It would destroy them faster than any disease or disaster. By giving everything to Paige, I'm giving them a chance to learn. If they choose to learn, the choice will be theirs. The final letter, written days before he died, made me cry. Paige, don't destroy them. Teach them. Show them what it means to earn something, to build something, to protect something worth protecting. That's the real inheritance I'm leaving you. Not money or property, but purpose. I called Derek and Nicole the next morning, asking them to meet me at Dad's grave. They arrived within the hour, both looking concerned. I'd brought the letters, all of them, in the wooden box. We sat in the grass by his headstone, and I read them selected passages. Not the harsh parts, but the parts where Dad explained his love for them, his hope that they'd change, his belief that they could become better people. Nicole cried quietly. Derek's jaw was tight, but I saw tears threatening to spill. He didn't hate you, I said when I finished. He loved you so much that he couldn't watch you destroy yourselves. That's why he did this. We thought he didn't care, Derek said. We thought he only cared about you. He cared about all of us. But he saw what you couldn't see. That giving you money without purpose would ruin you. We sat there for a long time, 3 siblings finally understanding the father they'd taken for granted. Before we left, I made an offer. Thompson Construction needs managers. People who understand the business from the ground up. You've been working for 3 months now. You're learning. In time, if you prove you're serious, there could be positions for both of you. Not because of your last name, but because you've earned it. Derek looked at me with something like hope. You'd really do that? After everything? That's what Dad wanted. Not revenge. Redemption. But you have to earn it. Every single day. Nicole took my hand. We will. I promise. Walking away from the cemetery, I felt lighter than I had in months. This was the path forward. Not perfect but real. 6 months passed. Derek moved up from general labor to assistant foreman. Nicole became office manager, handling schedules and budgets with surprising skill. They both attended their financial counseling sessions, paid their bills on time, and slowly rebuilt their lives. Vincent told me Derek. 1 year after Dad's funeral, I hosted a dinner at the house. The dining table was full again. Derek and his family, Nicole and her boyfriend, plus Mr. Feldman, who'd become like uncle and a father to us all. Candles flickered in the center of the table. Dad's favorite meal was spread before us. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, apple pie. Simple food. Good food. Before we ate, I stood raising my glass. Everyone quieted, looking at me expectantly. Dad once told me that family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty, trust, and showing up when it matters. I looked at each of my siblings. We failed that test once. But we're learning. We're trying. And I think Dad would be proud of that. Derek raised his glass. To loyalty, earned, not inherited. To loyalty, everyone echoed. As we ate and laughed and told stories about Dad, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Real genuine peace. The house was full of life again. The business was thriving. And my siblings had become people I actually wanted around. Dad's legacy wasn't just money or property. It was a family that finally understood what mattered. And for the first time since he died, I felt like I'd truly honored him.